This evening. We had the first applicant. Each applicant's hands up for moving. Second, and we'll start right in. I'll just read Emily what's going on. This is for a special permit application for modifications to approved application. Current application includes construction of 5-story, 7-unit age restricted apartment building reduced from 82 units, with 90% of the units leased as affordable housing pursuant to 830G. Associated parking, stormwater management, utilities, and landscaping. We've seen this before, so please start your presentation.
Great, thank you. My name is Matt Ravina. I am a senior project director with Urban Development, representing the Campbell Grange project. I'm joined tonight by my colleague Agap Takamajian, who's also with Wind, and then virtually I'm joined by our civil engineer Paul Italiano from VHB and our architect Paul Humphreys from the architectural team. Thank you all for taking the time to hear about our project, which most of you are or may be familiar with from the last time we were in front of the board. So just a brief overview. We're proposing the redevelopment of the former Campbell Grange building, which is outlined in this image in blue. We have West Broad Street to your south, the Pocketuck River at the bottom of the page. And then our project is located at 15 Cogswell Street. We're down at the end of Cogswell Street, and is this 2-acre irregularly shaped parcel here. And we're proposing to construct 70 units of senior housing, predominantly 1- and 2-bedroom units on the site. You all previously reviewed this project when we were proposing a larger building. We previously had a proposal for 82 units that had larger bedroom types in it. So this is a modified version of that initial proposal, which has been downscaled. That project had been approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, is fully permitted. We're seeking to now get the modification made for a smaller building. We're no longer planning to pursue the 82-unit building, though it is fully permitted right now. We previously appeared before the ADRB twice in 2020. After the first meeting, there were several comments that were provided, and our architects and the architectural team made revisions to the site plan. This project is an 832 project, and so it's not subject to the same type of local planning requirements that other projects may be. However, we do want to try to follow the local permitting requirements as much as we possibly can. Back in 2020, we actually got the planning and zoning approvals prior to our second ADRB meeting, but we made modifications, building design, and good faith effort. And we're looking to do the same here to really get your feedback on the overall architectural and landscape design, and to the best of our efforts, incorporate what comments we can as part of our revised proposal. So tonight, we're seeking comment from the ADRB on our proposal. There is a public hearing, to my understanding, scheduled for December 20th with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we'd like to have the ADRB's report in advance of that, so the Planning and Zoning Commission has that to consider. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Vitaliano to start off, our site engineer, and I will be playing Dan away for you all this evening. So Paul, take it away.
Thanks, Matt. As Matt mentioned, my name is Paul Vitaliano. I'm Director of Land Development for VHB. We're located in Wethersfield, Connecticut. I'd like to just go through our proposed conditions board very quickly. I think Matt's already explained the existing conditions. I know everyone's familiar with the site. So Matt, if you could flip to that proposed board.
Hey, Paul, this is Paul with the architectural team. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, please go ahead. Thanks, Paul. I was just going to ask.
Okay.
No one, I'm the only one who can really see the screen. It's just a little laptop.
Oh, okay.
The in-person boards is what we'll be looking at.
Okay.
Board members participating virtually.
Oh, there is one actually. Yeah. So there is one board member participating virtually, so that might help her.
And I think Paul's just
Okay.
gonna mirror what we've got here in person.
Yeah.
That's the plan, yes.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
That is exactly the plan. You're correct.
So Paul, if you go to the proposed board and just the next one. There we go. So very quickly, as Matt mentioned, we're here with a reduced version of the previous project, and to put that in perspective, when you look at the white box that's in the middle of the site, in the middle of the building, which is in red, just to the left of that, that's where a garage entrance is into the building. So to put things in perspective, everything to the right of that entrance, and Paul, could you point to that where the garage entrance is, please?
Absolutely, right here.
Thank you. So everything to the right of that basically is unchanged from the previous development. And the changes that we made to reduce the building are to the left of that. So as you can see, there's a double stack of parking to the left. On the previous proposal, that was where the building extended to. So that building used to extend to the left into that parking area, and now it no longer does. So the building limits are what you see in red. And as Matt mentioned, that brought the development from 82 units down to 70. And one of the comments that we heard from planning was lack of parking. So that allowed us to add parking along with the reduction of the units, increase the parking ratio per unit. Just as a reminder, also to some of the items from 2 years ago, just Paul, if you could just pan around and point out the front entrance to the building, just to kind of give some context. Yes. So the front entrance is basically in that location, and when Paul discusses the architecture, you'll see that on the elevations. As I mentioned, to the left of that is the garage entrance because there is parking inside. There's 33 spaces inside the garage. And really the next component that we want to talk about was the landscaping, because I know that's kind of what you folks are interested in as well. What we tried to do is try to screen ourselves from our neighbors as best we can. So you could see a perimeter of trees, both in the back along the railroad side and in the front between us and our neighbors that are the neighbors that front Cogswell Street. The amenities to this site that we wanted to enhance was the river, right? That's kind of the star of the show here that we wanted to really bring as part of our design. So what you'll see is that we extended, and this is, like I said, exactly the same thing that we proposed 2 years ago, but I just want to point it out again. You'll see that we extended a sidewalk from Cogswell Street all the way up into the site. And we're trying to hug the river as best we can and to obviously be at the flat end portion of the site and be safe. There will be an ornamental fence separating the sidewalk from the slope that goes down to the river. But basically, we have some seating areas there. You can see a couple pads for benches and just really kind of leaving that space a little open. So that's why it's not as densely vegetated as some of the other buffers, because we wanted that to kind of be flex space for the residents. So we really have a couple of trees there and are leaving it as lawn area to be flexible. What you see on the right-hand side at the top of the building, if you'll remember, this building's built into the slope that's there. There's a tiered level to get up to the back. And what we're going to use for those tiers are basically large stones that we're going to have from the site to create kind of a terrace. And those terraces will be landscaped. I'm starting from the bottom and working my way up here. And as you get to the top of the terrace, as Matt's pointing out, there's a patio area there that's only accessible from basically for the residents from inside the building. There is a emergency staircase that would be gated on the side, but basically that's a patio area, once again, at the highest elevation to take advantage of the views, look at the river. And you can see that patio, which is around 700 or so square feet. And then to the right of that, there's a lawn area. And then another patio area to the right of that, which is along the river with some seating there. And that, just to put some context there, if anyone's been out to the site, that's where the old bridge abutment is. So we're basically kind of working our way into that existing feature. And really from a site standpoint, that's really it. Like I said, the rest of it's perimeter landscaped to kind of screen ourselves. So up to you if you want to answer any site questions now, or if you want to wait until after Paul discusses architecture.
All the big architectural of it. questions at once.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is, I think we're ready. Matt, just go with the first floor plan view. I'll introduce myself. I'm Paul Humphreys, with the architectural team. And I can review some of the design changes. Actually, Matt, can we start with the floor plan?
Sure thing.
Just the first floor plan, just to show the footprint revisions, much to Paul's point. So as Paul was stating, what we effectively reduced the building by about 75 feet. We took this off of the left-hand portion of the building here in the plan. And to Paul's point, this provided an ample opportunity for some additional parking. The other big change that we made since the last iteration, as Matt pointed out, we're really favoring mainly 1 bedrooms with an occasional 2 bedroom. So we're really aiming this towards a senior community type setup. So we have our entrance down at we have our garage entrance, as Paul pointed out, and then we have a lower amenity level, provides some access to the elevators from grade. And then we have our unit. Then we have 4 stories of units that are above the garage, and we have that amenity space. Again, because we're built into the hill, which some of the renderings and the perspectives will show. We're actually the grade at the first floor is significantly higher than the actual grade at the garage. Again, because of the hill, but this does provide an opportunity to provide an at-grade amenity, landscaped amenity that's accessible from the first floor. So we created an amenity area that's built off that access. And then from there, we have floors for this floor just continues up, and we have mainly just stacking units that continue up 4 stories. So I think the next board, just to review real quick. And then Matt, I think we can go right to the perspectives. So again, we can kind of see we can see the egress stair here that Paul was pointing out, and then this terraced, heavily terraced and landscaped area that's to the right of the building. So as we can see, we have 4. We kept the 4 stories of residential units over the garage, but one thing that we did do to try to make the building appear to be as low as possible, we lowered the eave height. So the eave height, we actually lowered the eave height to the below the 4th floor. So in this case, we're calling the upper floor the 4th floor. So we actually lowered the eave to below the 4th floor, and then at this front facade, we actually built our units into the eaves of the building, creating dormers are used to create livable space within this roofed area, providing windows. So again, using the gabled, using the gables to give a more traditional New England look. Utilizing lap siding, again, more of a traditional New England look. And so really helps to lower the building and sort of bring the context of the New England vernacular. Go to the next view, Matt, just show the riverfront view. So again, this shows this shows that terraced landscaped area that Paul brought up and how that works, and able to have so we have our grade at grade entrance, and then because we're built into the hill, we're able to have a landscaped area at the top, and this nice amenity area with these windows that overlook the river. So I think that's about it.
And Paul, just two other quick details on this that were modifications that were made from the last time we appeared before the meeting. Added the masonry on the first floor and the green screens now on the garage level. Is that right?
The masonry, I believe we had the masonry from before. How did you mean? I'm sorry, Matt.
I think we changed that. I think we had like a gray stone product, and then that was changed to like a red brick product.
Oh yes, that was actually a response from the last meeting. We do have a more traditional red brick that replaced the grayish brick that was from before.
Thank you, Paul and Paul. So with that, turn it over to you for questions.
Yeah, Michael McKinley here. I have a few questions for anyone who, Paul or yourself. First, just a very general one, just to clarify, so the reduction in size was done to add parking. Is that correct? Just as a background.
Yeah, it was more, it wasn't specifically to increase the parking ratio. It was more just a general piece of feedback that we had heard about the density being too high on this site from various members of the community. So we brought the overall scale down as part of that. We understand that there's still some concerns about the number of units here, but this is the smallest building we can make, and so
Right.
economically feasible.
Right. Well, I think that's, praiseworthy. And, I would venture to say, at least from our standpoint and others, is that the unsolvable problems with these projects is that they're just too large. I mean, it creates, it could be that there's a lack of parking, but even more so, as the buildings are completely out of scale with stone. I mean, so what I'm, it's praiseworthy because you've reduced it in size, but I would tell the community it's because of that rather than increased parking, because that's, something that has, the scale of this has a significant impact on the entire community. Maybe this site is less impact than others, but certainly Route 1, we talk about their precedence in the community. And, the parking really pales in comparison to building something that might be 2 or 3 times what the local zoning allows, which has been thought out very well. So anyway, that's a compliment. It might not have sounded like one, but it is. And the second thing is maybe for Paul, the architect. Hello, Paul. Can you talk a little bit about the architectural character and maybe configuration of the main entry? I can't quite make out. We're kind of at a disadvantage because we're looking at some renderings that are. It doesn't quite. I can't see it in the rendering, and then also we have the plans, but it's really not being conveyed. So can you talk about that, particularly at the ground level, and how you feel that it's articulated as a main entry to the building?
Sure. So at the main entry of the building, and this was a carryover from the last time, but we did keep we have a heavy, what we did is we created this cornice roof structure. So it's got maybe a little bit hard to see, unless you from the board, so it's the disadvantage, but I'll describe it as best I can. So we created a heavy cornice roof structure that encompasses that main entry piece, and then we have a glass corner jewel, so I'll call it like a entry glassed area with the storefronts and the tall entry doors. Um, so that's really how we signified the front entrance. And then again, we have this, have this that gabled structure that is sort of, centered over that in terms of massing to kind of create that, where that corner of the building is.
Okay, thank you. And could you, moving on from that, just one last question. What is the character, of the window, let's say the typical windows, which, well, any of the windows, are they without, or what kind of trim do they have? Say, at the pad and the sill and the casings, in other words.
Well, the intent was to have the windows have a very minimal frame, so that the siding really just kind of goes in around it. So it actually does show in the rendering, but it's a composite window. So the actual window itself actually does have a pretty thick frame. And then the siding really just butts into that. It does look very nice once it's all installed. And then the other thing, actually, it's a very subtle change from the last one, but we did actually, these windows are awning windows, but we actually raised up the mullion, the middle mullion, to try to make them look a little bit more double hung, to make that a little bit more of that New England double hung vernacular, but again, using an awning window. So that was another, again, very subtle change, but one worth pointing out.
Are you, for the typical window, are you on sheet, maybe it's A4, which is a color rendering? There's a picture of a vinyl composite window and a line drawn to an actual window on the elevation. Is that the typical window that, in terms of the frame, where it's a vinyl composite window?
Yes.
It is.
Yep, that would be the typical residential window.
Is that, the windows, I think you know what I'm getting at. The windows that you've drawn in your elevation look very lightweight and minimal, and that looks just the opposite. I mean, that in your, maybe it's because it's a square window and it's small, but I mean, that it's extremely heavy looking. Did you mean for it to be that?
And how do you do
No.
it now? It's freezing. How do we speakerphone on this? I'm listening to the hearing.
Because it's the flange, Michael, I think you're showing the entire unit as opposed to what would actually be seen. So I think that's probably the flange around the frame, but it doesn't represent anything that the rendering does, because there's no there's no hopper there or anything, I don't see a break in that or a center piece of style or whatever you call it. Everything goes across. So it's not there. It's not a true rendering of what is, or the intention on the rendering.
What do you have?
The rendering is more the intention.
Okay.
Again, I think this particular photo of a window was probably of a sample window, which is actually quite small. So there's not a lot of glass to frame. And that's perhaps a little bit misleading, but the actual frame size on the rendering is,
Yeah.
it is somewhat correct. We try to get that right.
Yeah, well, I think that would be, I'm glad to hear you say that, because whatever you have shown there as vinyl composite window, it's hard to say, it's hard to tell what we're looking at, but the proportions are certainly objectionable. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree.
The rendering looks far better, and that would be the design. That is the design intent.
Yeah, I guess the only the only hanging issue there is, do you feel like these would, in your attempt to kind of move toward some tradition in terms of the gables and the dormer, maybe the brick material and horizontal siding, do you think that this many windows without sills is going to be compatible with that minimized look? Or do you think that you may be running the risk of looking like you have an incomplete window? Have you thought about that?
We did, and I think to your point, we did want that, we did want to have that minimal look and really have that kind of have that window be a punched opening and accentuate the siding so that, the um, the window doesn't necessarily become about the trim, that's around it, but it's more
Yeah.
kind of like just this more contemporary, the siding, which is definitely in the New England vernacular, but then we have that, just that punched opening, it's a very clean look. So that's what that's what we're aiming for.
Right, I get it. Yeah, we have one project which is similar scale, I guess, Spruce Meadows, which has a similar vocabulary, I think, for what you're proposing, and they did go the distance to have window casings and trim. So, and that, given the objectives, was pretty successful. So, anyway, I'll leave it at that, but it's, I wanted to make sure you thought about that.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. That's all I have right now.
So,
So this is Brett Perkins, and the Special Need Board. The material, the brick material is not really masonry material, is it?
It's actually proposed to be a thin brick material. So for all intents and purposes, as far as the look is concerned, it will look exactly as it's presented on the rendering, but it is a real brick. It's just a thin brick application.
So what is the proposed lifespan of the building?
Matt, I'll let you
Is
speak
the
to that
building
one.
gonna last 100 years? Is it gonna last 50 years? Is it gonna last 25 years? What's the intended lifespan of the building?
Yeah, I mean, it's intended to last for a very long time. I don't have the.
Yeah, I know, but the materiality of the building doesn't reflect that.
Okay,
So that's why I'm asking the question.
understood. And understood that various components will be, replaced over time through capital plans in 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
So are you designing the first floor to flood?
So the first floor is elevated 2 feet above base flood elevation. The garage is 5 feet above base flood elevation.
So the garage is at 15 and the lobby's at 12.
Okay.
Right, so what is flood on the Flathead River?
10.
10? So, we're not future-proofing this at all when we start to do that.
Not for, significant changes in the base flood elevation.
Well, Matt, I think it's worth pointing out that I believe that the and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the base design flood elevation is a freeboard of 1 foot. So the flood elevation is 10 feet. The required design elevation is 1 foot above that, and we're actually 2 feet. So we are actually building 1 foot higher. Matt, I don't know if that's a point that you brought up before or not.
Yeah, that's correct. We're 2 feet above the flood elevation of 10, and our garage is actually at 15 as you come into the garage. So we're
And required's 1, correct?
1 foot above, right? And we're 2 feet above.
And Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this section is, the flood elevation is estuarial flooding, not tidal flooding, correct?
Either way, it's a base flood of 10.
Yeah.
But yes, so really, not to get too deep into this, but at the end of the day, when you look at some of the other buildings on West Broad Street, this is actually going to be the highest and driest site.
That's right.
Do you know what zoning would require for this site? I see it's 75 feet from average grade to the highest roof there. Do you know what zoning allows?
As far as the height,
Yeah.
let me see here.
And I had one more question though.
I'm sorry. I didn't
So I was wondering, how fire equipment was gonna get behind the building?
So the previous version of this larger building had been reviewed by the fire department. They didn't require vehicular access behind the building. It was provided staircases on both sides of the exterior for men to be able to run up the stairs if needed for there to be emergency access on both sides of the building.
And this is Keith Bryan. So Chris, to answer your question, the normal height limit in this zone is 50 feet. And it is with sloped roof that's measured from average finished grade to the midpoint of the sloped roof. Although if it's a mixed use building by special permit, you could go up to 70 feet. So this isn't a mixed use building, it's just residential, but so, you know, it exceeds the height limit for residential somewhat. Even though the height between this and the old version, even though the height to the peak of the roof is the same, the way zoning measures height, the height is measured a little lower with this building because it is the, yeah. Mhm.
So basically it's the half of the eave to the ridge line, is that what the cap is?
Mhm.
Not to the highest point of the parapet.
Right.
Yeah, and this one is, is your height 52 feet?
Average.
No, sorry, that's the average
Well, the
grade.
bottom eve is 59.
So could you tell me again, what the height is, just out of curiosity, from the, you know, parking in front of the building to the ridge line? The building height, so I'm just curious how that compares to what he just mentioned, was 70-some feet allowable in a commercial development there. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what the height is?
So, and just to clarify one thing on that, Jerry, I believe that 75 feet is above sea level, not the height of the building.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so, based on this drawing, and Paul Humphrey's corrected on this, it looks like from average grade, the building height is 52 feet and 9 inches. Because the grade on the back side of the building is significantly higher than on the front side of the building. Is that right, Paul?
Correct. And that's also to the highest parapet as well. So we are, I believe our assumption was highest parapet, and we kept that assumption. And that highest parapet is dictated by our elevator shaft overrun.
But the perceived height, I mean, the
Perceived
average
height, yes, is lower.
higher than, is higher than the height of the front facade. I mean, the front facade is taller than 52 feet. Correct?
Correct. From the
Yeah.
correct from that front facade, but because the site is significantly sloped
Right.
from
so
front to
it
back,
looks,
that average grade is
So 63, 12 minus 7, 60.
It's 8 feet, say 10 feet. So, I mean, you're in the 62-foot range. But I guess it's curious that somebody could come in and get permission to do commercial development, there's 10 feet higher, correct? I mean,
Yeah, they
if
could.
they did everything else right.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. And also sort of puts it in some perspective. Now, when you go to the other side of the building, which is kind of, in stark contrast, meaning if you go to the west elevation, it just basically looks like you are not anticipating anyone ever seeing that or being there. And that does front on the tracks, but maybe Paul could comment, or you could comment on, what's the character there and who sees that? And is that just kind of a throwaway, or what are you doing there?
Paul, you want to take that?
Sure. So one of the things that we really wanted to do was we wanted to keep that sloped roof look and the dormers and have that continue around and sort of celebrate and highlight this yeah, if you can point on it, Matt, the amenity area. And then what we did is we actually carried over we did carry over that more the flat roof then continues all the way along along the back. So the flat roof, I mean, will that does allow again the units actually here will actually be a little bit they'll have a little bit higher ceiling. So we wanted to keep as many units, again, having that nicer ceiling along along this back facade, but but use the front elevation, really to celebrate that sloped roof look. So that's really where we put all of the effort. But that does come with a little bit of a sacrifice again, because those units are going to have a little bit, they're going to have the sloped ceilings within the units. So we wanted to maintain as many units as we could to have the nicer ceiling height.
And Paul, can you talk a little bit about the units with that grade level on the back with the private terraces?
Absolutely. Yep. So if you could pull up the first floor plan, ground floor plan. So again, because we're built into the terrace, yeah, we are built into the terrace, and the grading, we're built into the hill, that is. So the grade at the top, the left-hand side of the building, we actually allowed us to create these little terraces off the unit. So we actually have a little retaining wall, and I believe this is actually an exhibit. We didn't do a board of this one, but I do believe this is an exhibit to the stamp plan, to the plans that we submitted that were stamped. But it created an opportunity to have some private terraces at these back units right here, as the grading worked out.
Okay, thank you. My concern is not being familiar with what the community that's to the west, what are the visuals from over on the other side of the track? I mean, or is there anyone that would ever have a visual from there of the west elevation? And I just don't.
Even traveling on Amtrak.
Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, besides Amtrak, because they all wish they could live here, but they can't.
Yeah. So this is the circus lot, which right now is not developed. And I believe that Western Water has some rights over it. We know better keep.
Yeah, they actually own the property. And, the town often considers whether to buy it back from Westerly and, create some sort of riverfront park or waterfront access area there, but there's no specific plans.
But doesn't mean that won't happen.
Right.
Okay, well, that, I think that answers the question, my question.
This is Leslie Driscoll. Can I ask some questions, please?
Yes,
And looking at your first floor plan, where you have the sheet A101. So in this new parking, I've got a few of them, so I'll start with this one. This new parking lot you created where you took away the old section of the building. When people park there, how do they access the building? Do they have to come around to the front door, or could they go in through that end of the building into the garage when they walk?
Paul Vitaliano, can you handle that one?
Yeah, they're gonna walk, they're gonna have to walk to the front entrance.
Okay, so there's no side entrance to the building from that parking lot.
Paul, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those are, there's one access is for our garbage, basically to roll out our garbage, and the rest are emergencies. So they're walking along the front sidewalk to the front.
Yes, so it's a little bit of a long walk.
That's
then-
correct. We have an emergency egress only on that side. We do have a door that's up some steps, but the intent of that is to be an emergency egress.
Okay, getting back to emergency egress, currently that property has a road that goes back, behind the Vaca property up to the railroad tracks. And it might be used for Amtrak trains, officials, servicing the tracks or whatever, but I realize it might be private property and maybe it's not a right of way legally. But earlier you said that if fire trucks have to access the building, they're doing it through staircases. So that means that if there's an apartment in the middle of the back of the building, a truck can't get there with a hose, a ladder truck, to rescue those people there, because there's just no way to get to that road or the road area up by the tracks to put out a fire. So they're going to drag a hose through the building. I'm not really sure how they're going to get there if someone in the back in the middle of the apartment has a fire in their apartment.
Yeah. And
Paris landscape that, so you've prevented any access to those railroad tracks for either Amtrak personnel or emergency vehicles.
And Amtrak doesn't have any formal agreements to use that ramp structure that's there, that's in informal use. And as I mentioned before, the fire department reviewed the previous iteration with the longer building and was comfortable with what was being proposed.
Yeah, and minor point, the fire department did, it's subtle and it's dimensioned on other plans, but there was a certain width, even though it's landscaped on the perimeter, there was a certain flat width that they requested so that they could walk that area without the landscaping.
Okay, walk it though, not drive a truck.
Correct, walk it, yep,
No fire trucks in the back of the building at all.
no,
In a 4-story apartment building with 70 apartments, a fire truck cannot get to the back of the building.
that's what the fire department wanted, or was comfortable with, I should say.
And then when you, Chairman McKinley asked about, I think it was Michael, about or maybe it was Breck, about building the garage to be able to be flooded, because those base flood elevations were set, I believe, just 10 years ago by FEMA when Hurricane Sandy caused seawater to flood the entire Cogswell Street and the bridge going over to Westerly on Route 1. So, that wasn't that long ago, and it could happen again in 10 or 15 or 20 years. So if you don't have a building with a lifespan, as Michael was asking about, that's very long, then, one good flood into the parking lot, into the parking garage is going to most likely compromise the building And certainly vehicles that are parked there, so no one's gonna want to live there. So I wouldn't be too satisfied with, just going 2 feet above whatever's currently recommended.
Well, the parking garage is actually 5 feet above. So the finished floor of the building in the front entrance is at elevation 12. So that's 2 feet above. So that's the lobby area. The garage itself ramps up to elevation 15. So that's actually 5 feet above the 100-year flood.
It's like green, that was even worse than seeing the thing.
And there was that 2010
Yeah,
Riverine flooding there.
yeah, because I remember that whole storage unit out on the road there got completely flooded out. What did it pass?
Yeah.
Damn, on the talk about.
Yeah, so when you get to the intersection of West Broad Street and Cogswell Street in that immediate area closest to us, those elevations go all the way down to 8, 9, 10, and 11. So that's when I was kind of casually saying that we're going to be one of the highest points in town. That is a true statement. Especially the finished floor and definitely the garage will be much higher than a lot of the other buildings surrounding it.
Yeah, the other buildings are pre-existing before any of this, new regulation came in. So we could get another one of those floods like we did 12 years ago, and then emergency vehicles can't come through the roads, the flooding roads. I'm concerned about the sheer number of people that could live in. So say 1 to 2 people per apartment, 70 apartments. You could have at least 150 people living in this building in a fire or a major flood, and it would be very challenging for emergency vehicles to get to them, to rescue them, or for them to leave and get out with their cars or whatever, because they have to go down to sidewalks that are underwater. It just seems very problematic to me.
And this is a senior living?
Senior living.
55 plus. Some people didn't tell.
That's all I have right now.
Right, thank you.
Just on that, what Leslie was speaking, this is Elizabeth from, any sort of, like our house, we have a sump pump. It's a sort of built-in pumping system that quickly evacuate water if that did happen.
Paul, can you speak to that?
Yeah, no, there again, because we are, we are providing that freeboard. No, we're not having, there are no pumps currently in the project.
And Paul Italiano, overall, the site is higher than the site all drains to the river, correct?
Yeah, it drains down Cogswell Street. So like I said, when you get to the end of Cogswell Street, you're around elevation 9. And like I said, our garage is at 15 and the flood's at 10. So, we're well above the flood elevations, well above even the freeboard that we're required to have.
I had, a positive and negative and question. The positive, I think your roof design, the way, front facade is nicely adapted to, make it appear lower down and it's an improvement. Like Michael said, and the gray, especially in the back, is bothersome. It looks like potentially or something, like could something be done to even bring more of the lighter color into the back, even if it's just somehow tastefully done so that you're using the same material, but maybe you're using a lighter color. I can't tell if that gray in the back is darker than the gray in the front, but it just is kind of dour looking, and sad to see from the trim. My question was also, having grown up in this neighborhood, in this area, you've got the train in back, and it's something that makes living there less than ideal. But you accept it when you move there, but are you putting something into, especially the back wall, the faces, the tracks that provide some soundproofing into the restaurant?
Yeah, and Paul, Bruce, can you speak a little bit to the sound ratings of the wall assembly?
Yes, I can, and I apologize if I don't have the exact numbers, but the first thing that we did when we looked at this site is we hired an acoustical engineer to come out, and they observed both the sound ratings and they observed the vibration ratings from the track, both of which are as you would expect from being behind a train tracks. So in an effort to mitigate that, we actually have designed our window, our exterior wall assembly. It was reviewed by an acoustic consultant. I don't remember the exact SDC map, but I believe it was, I want to say 45. I can go back and take a look at that for the record, and perhaps I should. So there is some design and some thought into the exterior cladding and the window assemblies, which the window assemblies themselves are actually rather robust assemblies in terms of STC ratings, which is how you measure the ability of a certain object to to mitigate sound, to refer to the STC rating. And I can go back and check that number. Another item that we did, the bigger item, believe it or not, it was actually the vibration. And so we are actually actively exploring and have, with our acoustic consultant, a method of actually isolating the structural elements of the building to reduce the vibration within the units themselves, because the vibration was the larger concern. So both of those concerns we're attempting to mitigate through detailing.
Okay.
Chris Delaney with the Architectural Review Board, I had a question, I think Paul, well, actually, the first thing was regarding the flood elevation, I just wanted to make a clarification on that, and I also didn't want this board to really have a serious objection to the flood elevation, just because I feel like it sets a precedent that, that we would have to hold to everybody else who comes before this board, so I mean, the reality is I deal with the FEMA flood elevation quite often and, that's the guidance that's available. It's, the flood elevation is 10 plus 1 and they're going an additional foot above that, that's not even required. So to say that somehow doesn't satisfy the requirements, put it in realistic burden, to use as something to object to. I mean, yeah, it'd be great if they could go higher, but I think it's an unrealistic criticism, especially because, I mean, even 11 would be acceptable, or should be acceptable. I mean, that's the FEMA recommended elevation. But I'm kind of the architectural side. The west elevation view, regardless of the fact that it maybe could just be Amtrak passengers viewing that, I feel like that, I was an Amtrak passenger for many years myself before I moved to Stonington. I enjoyed the ride through Mystic, yeah. And I don't think I would enjoy seeing this building from the train.
Says something about your town.
It says something about the town.
Yeah.
And I really like to see an effort made to somehow improve on that. I know Michael had asked about the thought process there, but it just seems like the thought process was one maybe driven by, financial concerns really. And there's obviously not much of, not nearly the effort that was made in the front of the building. I don't know if there's a possibility to make improvements there, but that would certainly be my hope that could be addressed one way or another.
very much like the Berkeley Health Care Building on 95.
Mm-hmm.
Representation of modern architecture as you come into Stonington.
Absolutely.
And it's well seen.
Yeah, yeah.
On that west elevation, which seems to be popular now, there's, I can't, could you tell us what the predominant facade material is on that? In other words, the gray area, because I could tell that you have the horizontal, you have flat or horizontal siding on the end of the building where you have the dormers. But what is the rest of that? What are we looking at?
Yes, I can answer that. It's also a clapboard siding material that will be it's just a gray color.
Okay. So, I mean, without changing anything really, you could introduce a lighter coloration that would be, let's say, the same as what we have on the end element without any trouble at all. Correct?
Yeah, that's certainly something we can consider.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't require a change in material or detail at all, but I'm not sure that would get you there, because, yeah, I mean, you can see how on the end of the building, that element starts to relate to probably the more successful detail and scale that you have on the east side. Right, and then it stops. So I think there's a consensus here that you could do better on that. Based on the language that, or the palette that you have elsewhere in the building, you certainly have the palette there to work something out.
You got a manslaughter going down there, but Hornets would make it.
Okay. Yeah, we could certainly look at that.
Okay. So we have more comments right now from the board, because we do have some community members here that I don't know what capacity they're in, but we typically allow folks to have a say if they want to. Is there anything that anybody wants to make a comment on that's relevant to what we're here, we're architectural board? You know, this technically doesn't concern the number of parking spaces. It doesn't concern the flood elevation. We had conversation, but that's not our jurisdiction. So, architectural review.
Well, the question I had, and it's, I don't know if it's up to Mike on the board, but one of the issues may not be related to this stormwater management. It was my big pet peeve at the last meeting we have. Nobody's ever called me, nobody's ever talked to me about it. Can you briefly explain that?
Yeah, all I'm talking about, do you mind just giving a brief overview of that?
About the stormwater management in general.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure who made the comment, but
Sorry.
basically, I'm sorry, what's that?
A member of the public who was, you're asking about it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Basically, the stormwater management system remains unchanged because basically a roof became a parking lot. So the same system, pipe system that we had before, the same water quality measures is in place. At our last approval, there were some final comments that we implemented from the town's reviewing engineer at the end of Cogswell Street. Those were addressed after the approval in response to engineers' comments. Basically, our stormwater is collected and drains to the north and then down our entrance drive and into Cogswell Street and then to the river. So that part has remained unchanged since the last approval. So we had worked with the town engineer and at the time new town engineer as well. There was a transition and they were both on board at the same time for a while, and also the reviewing engineer. And we were able to satisfy their comments and actually went a little bit above and beyond, which they were appreciative of.
And Keith, the materials that we submitted to your office for planning and zoning included the drainage plan, the stormwater management report. Are those publicly available on the town's website?
They're not on the town's website, but, after the meeting, I can get your contact information and send you anything.
But there is some purification of that water prior to it going in the river.
Right, right.
And
And,
it's maintained this, you're assuming it's been good for 50 years, or who monitors that? That somebody didn't change their oil in the parking lot and then stormwater. Who monitors that?
but as far as that, it would be the owners. And we often, have them submit the maintenance logs to the town. If you see that.
Do we have other projects in town like this
Yeah, yeah,
that dump into the river?
right,
And you have maintenance logs from those property owners?
yeah.
Like, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't all of the properties on Cogswell Street tie into the line on Cogswell Street that ultimately drains into the river?
Yeah, so what happens now is the Cogswell Street drainage line goes out to the river. When I said we went above and beyond, what I meant by that was that there was an undersized pipe that would cause some flooding there, and we actually upsized that to improve that. Plus, we're also proposing a change to the end of the street to basically create a hammerhead that would allow any flood to basically dissipate quicker, and also create a hammerhead for emergency vehicles to turn around in. So that's the improvement to Cogswell Street, which basically the rest of the town drains through. And then from our site, we added water quality units, whereas currently today the water is untreated that leaves the site. So what we're doing with our addition of landscaping, which promotes infiltration and just cleaning of water through the grass areas and the water quality unit, we're definitely improving water quality on this site versus what's there today.
Okay, one more question. How do you collect the water on the core of the town? How is it collected in a stone drain or?
There's a series. I'm sorry. There's a series of catch basins that we're going to have.
On the perimeter?
It's within our parking area, so it's basically along our curb lines.
And the grading will pitch away from the property line to those catch basins. So since the last time we were here, we updated the stormwater management plan to reflect a smaller scheme. So let me get your email and I'll send you the drainage plan and the stormwater management plan afterwards.
So I couldn't copy the whole thing here, the stormwater is part of it.
So all the loose leader waters go into the same system?
Correct.
And I'm looking at your C-3.0 and I'm not understanding where the filtration system goes.
There is not a filtration system. There's a water quality unit. That's the last structure prior to discharge into Cogswell Street.
So that thick dash line there going out to a riprap to the river, that's where the filtration occurs?
No, I'm not sure where the word filtration's coming from. That's the upsized pipe from the pipe that's currently on Cogswell Street. We upsized that last run of pipe because there was some flooding at the end because that pipe was undersized. So we're upsizing that pipe. So there isn't filtration. What I might have said maybe that you heard was that there's going to be an increase in opportunity to infiltrate through the extra grass area that we have. So we have an increase in pervious area, which will infiltrate water. And then the rest is collected by the catch basins and the roof drains and piped out to Cogswell Street.
So what you're saying is you're retaining stormwater on site?
I'm not saying that either. No, we're discharging, we're collecting it in our catch basins, running through the pipes and discharging to Cogswell Street.
I personally don't see how Bucket River, I've lived in Bucket Stonington my whole life. The river gradually has been cleaned over the years. We've had factories down, we had Harris, we had Gardens, been polluted for years. We're finally cleaning it up. Not that you're polluting it, I don't mean it that way, but I mean, we're just adding so much potential here of something that could go bad. And I'm not saying that as property, I'm saying that as a concerned citizen of Stonington.
Understood. I think that Paul, what the point he's trying to make is that right now, everything that's on that property currently drains to the river because of the amount of paved surface, and we're increasing the amount of impervious surface, so something can filter naturally through the soil before it hits the river.
Yeah, it is out of our jurisdiction, but it does raise some question because just from our own reviews, correct me if I'm not correct, but every new project that comes to us of any size has on-site retention.
This
Without
was,
telling you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, that it's a requirement as far as I know. Not for private residence, but it kicks in and certainly in this size project regardless of. So I think that's where some of these questions are not all of them, they're coming.
Yeah, so if I could answer that statement's not really correct. What you're required to do is to mitigate and match pre and post stormwater runoff. And we have two things here which we worked out with the engineering department. The first is that because of our increased pervious area, we actually are decreasing runoff. So that's why there isn't detention. Because right now it's a very compacted gravel area. And because of the landscaping that we're adding, we're actually a reduction. Second of all, we had worked it out with the engineering department that since we are close to the river, you really want to discharge your water first. If you're creating detention when you're close to the outlet, which our last pipe on Cogswell Street is taking the water from the rest of the town, it's actually a detriment to detain because all you're doing is letting the rest of the water catch up to you and then you create a problem. So those are the things that the stormwater report details and what the engineering department correctly, in my opinion, approved.
So you're saying that even though you're adding that amount of parking and roof area as area, right, that there's actually less runoff than there is today?
Correct.
With the existing compacted gravel and.
Yep, and that's detailed in the report. And like I said, we had come to an agreement with the third party reviewer that even if that wasn't the case, detention would be a detriment. So it was kind of for both reasons. That's why detention was discussed early on and quickly dismissed once we looked at those
Right.
items.
Well, I would, I'd agree with you because every project that's come to us, the retention is very poorly handled. And from our viewpoint, because it's sort of a crater that's not landscaped properly and it's fenced off because it could be dangerous. So that's an interesting resolution. Moving on.
I have three comments to reflect on. One, I heard you say flat roof, and the building that's not a flat roof.
Paul, Humphrey, do you mind responding to that?
I couldn't hear the entire question. I just knew somebody mentioned flat roof and they're asking, is there a flat roof? Is that the question?
That's the question.
Okay. Matt, do you have the upper floor plan? So there is actually a floor plan where we do show a roof.
Yep.
So yes, it shows. So this does show again the that back facade. We can see that cornice being that back here. So the intent is that this would be a flat roof, and then we have the sloped roofs that go down to the start of the fourth floor along the river facade and the front facade.
So one of my worries for the people that live there over time is that flat roof won't bear the weight of snow. If there's air conditioning units up there, because there is a active 55 and over facility in Mystic. and they have a flat roof, and they're having major problems, right now with that roof. And at the time,
Got it. And we regularly design buildings with flat roofs in New England, and we don't have those same kinds of issues, so I can't speak exactly to how that building was constructed, but the structural details here, Paul, I don't know if you want to weigh in at all, but they're designed to handle, certain amounts of snow loads and with proper clearances around mechanical equipment to be cleared out when in those events, right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. These are very well designed, and again, the mechanical equipment, to Matt's point, will be up there. You can see some of the pathways that we leave around that, and then also these roof trusses are well designed to maintain for the snow load per the current building codes, which are rather stringent for flat roofs for that reason.
What is the superstructure?
Paul?
It would be wood frame trusses. The manufactured wood frame trusses.
and then my, second, reflection is the material that's gonna be on the backside towards the train. That area is not gonna have a lot of sun exposure, it's gonna be more shaded. Is there gonna be any issues with like mold and mildew over time in the back of that building?
So one of the things that we didn't talk about is that this building is designed to passive house standards, which is a energy efficiency standard, and really focuses on having a very tight building envelope and super insulation. So theoretically, first of all, it's on the west elevation of the building, so you'll still get afternoon side, pretty full on that side of the building, but that shouldn't impact indoor air quality at all. Is the mechanical system will have an energy recovery ventilator which provides fresh air into the units continuously. And then the added insulation for the building envelope will help control swings in temperature on the exterior, on the interior based on whatever's going on in the exterior.
I don't think you're understanding the question.
Okay.
The concern is the backside of the building is going to be in the shade the better part of the year. And hence there's an opportunity for mold growth to occur on the exterior.
These will also be ventilated facades. So to echo on what Matt was saying, as part of our passive house strategy, there is actually a rain screen and a ventilated facade, so the air can actually go in and behind the facade. So anything can dry out from both sides, which is a very big advantage to these passive house details, and mitigates and certainly mitigates any mold issues.
Both sides, circulation.
Yeah, and Paul, I don't think on this drawing, but there's a point where the foundation wall goes up, which is concrete, and then transitions to the siding.
Yes. What was the question?
I think your question was like with the hillside there, how does the facade dry out? And I think the answer is that it's a concrete foundation up to the hill and above up to whatever level, and then it transitions to the rain screen and the facade material we see here.
Yes, and Paul can speak to this point, but we're making an effort to grade any, grading the building in such a way that water, certainly drains away from the building. We also keep our siding 8 to 12 inches above any, any grade. So we're really providing that, a protection barrier there. For any siding is going to be well above, grade and protected.
There isn't gonna be any bushes or anything in the back, it just be all clear.
Paul Italiano, all the landscaping is set back from the building to the property line at the back, correct?
In the back, it's set back because of that fire department requirement I mentioned earlier. Is that what you're asking, Matt?
Yeah, it is. So there's 2 feet from the back of the building and then any of the landscape.
Yeah, I believe we have at least a 10-foot separation.
And now we have that, board up there, is the only access from this, project to beyond Cogswell Street? Or is there, an egress out from the other side?
Yeah, you can, there is egress out, between Best and next door.
Egress is one concerns last time was that alleyway, is hard to get it out from. And I know that there's some traffic changes on the road that have been done with Cogswell Street is, but, I wondered, and it didn't seem as if there was anything at the entrance to that alleyway. It's simply, you can only go out in.
That's, I never remember which way we went on that call, and I don't know if you remember, our the traffic engineer who's not on the call, has put that in his traffic report, so that's something we can pick up.
Because that's a dangerous place to try to get out of. Go fast, and I mean, it's just a tough spot there. And it would be almost better if the only way, the main entrance and exit, you know, designed for Cogswell Street, would be better. But how much is that going to be used? And also people were leaving the Bassine drive-through exit out that way a lot too, which would add to it. That's not hard. Okay, but that was a concern of mine as a citizen. My only worry or concern, I know when the project's done, there'll be cars coming out, but, we own a business on Cogswell Street. And I'm just wondering how during however many months or years it's gonna take to do this project, how Cogswell Street is going to be monitored for safety to come in and out of that street with all of the businesses and the trucks. And
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you now, so we'll talk to the contractor and discuss their logistics plan. The idea is not that, you know, we wouldn't have people parking on the street during construction, but certainly Cogswell Street would be used to have construction vehicles coming on to this. So let me talk with the contractor and understand what their plan is for that.
Okay, yeah, I think we got a little bit off our objectives tonight, but it was probably very important to let everybody talk, so.
Just gonna check if anyone's on here. Is there anyone attending virtually who had any comments also?
Fine.
So once the applicant leaves here, what's the remaining, they're coming in, front of P and Z again?
Yeah, they'll have to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission again,
Mhm,
for approval of these changes.
mhm,
That public hearing scheduled for December 20th.
mhm.
There's also a meeting with the Police Commission where they're gonna review the traffic safety and public safety elements here. That's during their December meeting. I'm not quite sure of the date, but, you know, roughly a month from now in December.
Mhm.
It'll be posted on the website.
So there's for traffic in particular, there's a forum for your comments, which is where somebody can actually address it, who's responsible for it. And also for, the stormwater management and those kind of engineering issues.
thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Any further comments? Should we talk about, this among the, commission here?
Yes.
Okay. All right, who wants to talk? Leslie, do you have any um, final comments here for us, for the members?
I guess, architecturally, thank you, Michael. Those 4 terraces in the back, the apartments that are below grade, the height of the retaining wall around them is 7 feet. So those are really just window wells, I think, to allow windows in those apartments. Otherwise, they would not have windows. So it's nice if someone can step outside and use a terrace, but they are window wells, and they will have, a concrete retaining wall on all sides. And unless maybe it's all open from one apartment to the next across those 4 apartments, which would be a little better. And then I agree with other members' comments about the west facade being kind of bland and uninteresting. I'm in New York, and I took a train here, and I love looking at all the little villages along the way and the towns out the train window. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Hang on.
And the building is gonna be seen from all sides, so consideration needs to be made to the western facade.
Needs attention.
Can't be an afterthought.
Be nice if there's a perspective rendering of that back view that shows the view from the tracks in perspective, not just in a plane, a 2D plane elevation.
You see the stark contrast of coming over the Mystic River, coming through down through Stonington, seeing Stonington Harbor, making the turn towards Blockup, going past Barn Island, then being confronted with this backside of a building is good standing for example.
Would we make a motion?
You have no further.
No, I mean, that was pretty much.
All right. Yeah, I would agree. I think the west side is clear. I have some wording for that. And then my other is that kind of in the same category is, I don't know what you feel about this, but I don't see, there's been considerable effort on the east facade to develop a motif and character. I think the front entry needs more attention. It doesn't quite get there in terms of it's kind of the central element that would read as an entry. And even though you're minimalizing the architecture in various ways, I think you really need something to anchor the building and to read as a front entry, and you don't have it yet. So, I would, we'd like to see, but I mean, I'm just seeing what you guys think, but basically, I think it's pretty clear. So I think there has to be more attention and detail and kind of importance given to it, because otherwise it in the drawings that we have, it looks like a storefront. And you don't want a storefront there. You want main entry that So that's my second main entry.
I'd agree, it needs something like a porte cochere or some.
Exactly.
Some statement that this is the front door.
Yeah, and there is some sort of, um, roof there that projects. And, kind of hard to tell, but perhaps maybe it's an enhancement of that. The color, it goes away because of the coloration in the renderings. And, you know, when you look at the renderings, of the east side, it almost looks like that entire element is floating, which you do not want. I mean, because it's white. And then all of a sudden, below it goes to something dark. And it, you know, there are some things that we don't see that you see. But still, I think you can get the point here. That maybe it's just an enhancement of that roof feature. Because I know you can't build anything. It's not like you can do a whole lot there and build out into the parking lot, because that's not, you understand?
Make it welcoming to the home.
Yeah, approachable, sense of front entry. Okay, is that it? Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to approve based on two conditions that I can give you now, unless you already have it. You don't have any.
Yeah, it would help if you,
Okay.
you stated it here.
Or is there anything else to add to that? Okay, so one would be, revise the appearance of the west elevation to resemble the east elevation. I mean, it'd be going in a lot of detail, but you know, I mean, that's basically it, right? You don't want it to look like some other elevation.
Simply structural.
Right. And we know there are parameters to that, but that's number two, number one, and number two is, let's see, is something is,
Entrance.
the main entry, needs to establish more character as a front entry, via the detail and, the, coloration.
Some sort of connection between that lower entry level and the gable configuration above it. Like.
Right? Are you good?
Yeah,
Okay. So, I'll make a motion that we approve the application with those stipulations. And, you know, that we would like to see it, what's done. So, I mean, we're in a situation where we'd like to condition that approval on your return, which we can do, correct?
you could, you know,
Okay,
if they come back for the next one.
yeah,
Keith, is that the standard for the DVG projects?
It's something that, you know, the board often asks for
Okay.
applications to come back, just to, you know, address.
Well, I think the benefit is, from my understanding, and or Keith can correct me, but we could vote to not approve it based on the current application as we see it, which is probably what we would do. Or we could vote to approve it pending so that way you guys would be able to go forward to zoning,
Sure.
with a conditional approval. Is that right, Keith? Is that?
Right,
the
right.
way it
exactly.
plays out?
It's a win-win situation, but, you know, only if you respond to what we've asked you to respond to.
Sure, of course, and it's two conditions, and we're certainly
Right.
looking at those.
But I think, yeah, I mean, I would certainly not vote for approval, and I feel like that might be the general consensus if the conditions aren't agreed to, so.
Does that sound doable to you?
Yeah, so basically you'd like to review the changes that you requested here.
Would still allow them to make that next zoning meeting to at least keep things moving.
Right,
And then-
right. Which is basically what happened last time with this.
Yeah, I think that.
Okay. Oh, okay, I think I started to make a motion. that-
I'll second.
A revised appearance of the west elevation to resemble eastern elevation. And the main entry needs to establish more character as a front entry via detail and coloration.
And continuity with, um, involved facade.
Right.
Yes.
You a second?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for your time.
I just want to make sure you understand, I'm not voting for this. I'm not approving it with that stipulation. I'm not in favor of it.
Okay.
Yes.
So we still got a couple things on here. We passed over election of officers, which we do annually.
At least with the brains.
Is there any reason why we can't just remain the status quo? I mean.
Oh, you definitely could. Someone would just make that motion to,
Okay. As
Leave
long
status
as
quo.
Chris Thorpe isn't around, but I feel like,
That's good. You can't object.
he can't object, exactly.
Right.
And
Was too happy about it. Kept following.
oh, yeah, I know. Well, this is even better than he's not here. So I'll make a motion to remain, what's the terminology?
Current slate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's,
A second.
thanks, Leslie.
So. Any discussion? All right, let's have a
All
vote.
right, me.
All right, aye.
I,
Unanimous.
Wow.
Leslie, they didn't win you over on that, huh?
no. No.
we've also got the minutes from the last meeting, which was actually in July.
I wasn't at it,
Wow.
but I didn't find any typos, so that's my main task. But it's being treated.
Are you the son of the day?
The day.
The day.
The day. Wow. Well,
We're not in caucus, so.
Oh, are you in executive session?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just had like,
Oh, we're not in the executive session.
we can remove any kind of cloak of secrecy here if you'd
Yeah.
like to say something. Is that what you're going to do? Say something that's, you don't have to say
I
something.
know.
I don't want to, I just want to ask.
You wanna
people a
leave,
question.
probably.
I do, I want you guys to hurry up so I can.
All right, you can't leave.
Yeah, the meeting's being recorded too.
Okay.
But yeah, executive session is really only for like,
Uh-huh. Okay.
personnel issues and things like that.
Uh-huh. Right, so we have these meeting minutes from a long time ago.
Yeah,
No,
July 11th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was the hotel
Hmm.
to Tractor Supply.
The salt shed, I think.
And the town salt shed.
This was the,
We didn't get them to that search, sorry.
In that ski hotel. But it's back into the road or side.
So Ms. McCrell's not the director of public works anymore.
Oh, really?
Sir?
Yeah, she resigned, I think. So,
Yeah.
well, I make a motion to accept the minutes. They seemed fine to me.
yeah, it's really hard to read this one. It has draft and I'm sure. I read the draft more than draft. Okay. Meetings approved. Meeting minutes approved. Which one we approve?
Second.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
All in favor, yes.
Yes,
So what is happening with that hotel? Is it coming forward again?
I haven't heard anything else about it,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure if they're, diligently working on it or if it's.
and keep happening to the Brookside apartments, because I saw them breaking up the pavement to the bus turnaround and then they repaved it.
Yeah,
They were digging some test pits, but it's been kind of quiet.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was approved by planning and zoning. I think at this point, I don't know if they've gotten a building permit yet. Yeah, like you said, they were doing the test pits there. So I'm not sure just how soon they'll really be starting.
What's going on across from the bicycle store or next to the mine?
That's,
We did a,
we've already looked at that, right? Earlier in the summer? It's gonna be.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of clearing, but it looks like they're clearing wetlands.
yeah, they get approval from the Wetlands Commission to do clearing over there. And, to do a little filling of wetlands in one area, sort of a nominal wetland area, but not to build anything at this point. They'll have to reapply for that. They had a plan for, sort of a mixed-use development with residential and I think it was a bank with a drive-through or these different things there. It was a bit speculative. So they'll have to come back when they're more certain about what they actually want to do there with the site.
Right, that's right.
But they did get approval to do that clearing there.
What's a bug unloaded there below it? So-
Yeah.
So the best way is going next to that. That's right. That's closer to Pawcatuck that we approved. Going kind of near where that roofing contractor is in that blue building. Is that still happening
Oh, on
Um,
South Broad Street.
on Broad Street?
Is this the gas station?
Yeah, the gas.
Yeah, the Best Way gas station.
The gas station, they had a couple nights of very long, arduous public hearing before planning and zoning with the rival gas station next door, fighting them every way, every step of the way. They ultimately withdrew that application, but they're working to resubmit basically an identical thing, so that may be back before you soon.
Mhm.
And if the wetlands approval is still under appeal and that's being fought in court, the gas station business is like that. Whenever a gas station applies, a rival gas station will appeal it and fight it every step of the way.
so it's like we have a little time there.
They should clean up. So that subdivision that we were, or that strip mall that we were supposed to look at today, they tabled that, you said,
They tabled that, they received comments they have to react to.
where exactly on Liberty Street is that?
There's like an old smoke shop type business there and a couple of you know, little houses there.
Yeah, okay.
Trying to think of what it's across
Yeah,
from.
no, I know where you mean now. So that's like one of those typical strip shopping centers on Granite Street or Franklin Street where there's like 4 stores and,
Yeah, and there's also a convenience store
yeah.
without a gas station with a drive-through. Those sort of things aren't normally allowed in that zone, but this was originally approved back in 2006 when they were able to be approved, when the rules were different there.
All right, well,
They just
hopefully
need to
there's
get-
grandfathering in of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Should we hold on to those plans or?
Yeah, they should be back next month here.
Okay, so hold on to them.
Okay.
Yeah. They just want it to be tabled until the next meeting.
Okay,
I have one observation which may have a little value, which is that this last project that occurred to me when at the first of the meeting is that none of us, I mean, the circumvention of all the good town planning and master planning and that's enabled through the 830G is, yeah, it's highly objectionable. Certainly, it shouldn't be for people to do what we do, right? And see somebody come in and do a project that's 2 or 3 stories taller, that's kind of an exaggeration. And certainly 2 or 3 times as big. And then, as we've seen, probably get somewhat of a carte blanche on other technical issues, site issues, stormwater, et cetera, you know, I mean, fire protection, that was a very good point. But what came out of that was that this group actually reduced the size of the project considerably. No one else has done that. They just said, guess what? We don't have to do anything.
And also too, the senior element, I think, was in response to the.
Yeah, there was, but what occurred to me is when the next project that comes to us, where they're doing the 830G, and it obviously is unsolvable, you know, it's the proverbial lipstick on the pig, because the problems are created by the size. And it's not necessarily the architecture, it's everything is burdened. It's a mass that we just come back and say, you know, yeah, we feel the project has to be reduced by 25% in size.
To be consistent.
I mean, this is hypothetical, because each project is its own project. And maybe one of them wouldn't need that because they're whatever. But via this, I mean, we have a precedent.
we don't have to approve these, though. We don't have to say, just because it's 830G, no matter how beautiful you make it, it's approved by our board. We could say no. I
We
just
don't
said,
even have to say no,
No, but
if you think about it.
we're not binding, so we're not, we don't, they don't have to get our approval, so if we don't like the size of a building in town, say no.
So when they came before us the first time with the original design, I will never forget that moment. When that lawyer said, we do not need to be here.
Yeah,
And, you know, I said, well, I would rather be playing paddle tennis, buddy, but I'm here, you know?
well, also, I didn't like it when he got up in a public town meeting for all the residents and said, we had approval of the ADRB board. We have approval of all the boards in town. And I had abstained from voting on it. I should have said no, but I abstained instead of saying yes or anything. So I don't like them twisting that and saying that everybody here thinks it's hunky dory when it's not. It's a giant eyesore. So.
Well, I think I think we should treat these projects as much as possible like any normal project. I mean, that's what everyone's saying, so that's nothing new, right? And,
Right, can only talk about the architecture. Well,
and,
I'm not always gonna only talk about the architecture if I think it's not suited for the site, for other reasons.
and that we should list exactly what the issues are. And if Bill Sweeney or someone else says, well, you don't understand because we don't have to do this, then we simply don't approve it. And it goes, then they can take their chances. And Keith, you could weigh in on this.
Yeah, I mean,
You
if
know.
you did that,
Mhm.
planning and zoning with a negative recommendation from you, per the state statutes, the Planning and Zoning Commission can't really deny it based upon the architecture of it, being an 830G application. And that's why it's sort of like, yeah, just review it like you would anything else, and PZC will do with your comments what they will, and legally they can't do too much with them,
Mhm.
other than sort of request that they, shrink it or make it look better in certain ways.
Uh-huh.
But they're really held to the standard of public health and safety that outweighs the need for affordable housing, and that can't be fixed through reasonable plan changes.
So I
Um,
then, Keith,
yeah.
go back to the fire department and say, why do you not think a fire truck needs to be able to get to the back of the building? That's,
Yeah, I mean, this has been reviewed by them for the larger building, and
were they
Yeah.
aware? I mean,
yeah,
that just blows my mind that a fire truck doesn't need to go back to the back of a large apartment building. To
yeah,
fight.
according to them, that the access driving around the back isn't always necessary as long as there's other
Yeah,
factors where they can meet it, especially if it's a sprinklered building.
that's just complete nonsense. It
So
just-
apartments has sprinkler system in it?
Yeah, I think a building like this would have to.
yeah.
That would be a question to ask, because maybe they don't.
I mean, it's a stick-built building, it's gotta have a major fireproof, fire protection.
Yeah, that doesn't agree with what I know about firefighting and suppression. I know a little bit. So, but, the other thing is that we spent a lot of time talking about issues that are
That's all.
revealing, necessary, but totally unrelated. And we can't, number one, we don't have any jurisdiction. But number two, we don't really make any recommendations. I mean, we can't, you can point that out, but, we're not, the public safety.
Yeah, yeah.
Not zoning.
It's,
And you get into this and somebody's, they'd be very correct in saying that this is, you're giving us really unclear signals. Because we don't know what you review anymore, because you're talking about parking, talking about stormwater.
Yeah, it would become like a,
And it's bordering on kind of a forum.
And then it undermines the real architectural
And everything
recommendation.
else is watered down.
Exactly.
So
it'll become sort of a second planning and zoning review before the planning and zoning commission.
And I do, and I'm sure other people here do as well. I do presentations like these people do, and it's very frustrating when you're presenting, because I think in most cases, you want to work with a local board and but when their recommendations are coming from all these different angles, and maybe they don't even have the understanding and the authority to make the right recommendation, it gets very frustrating, and it waters down the process. And you hope that the people in the positions, planning and zoning and the fire department, they do their jobs, you hope they do their jobs, but.
But there's a third-party reviewer on this project, that's right?
Yeah, for engineering, there is, and there will be again for this.
site engineering.
Yeah, site
building
engineering,
Engineering.
stormwater,
Storm.
not the building necessarily.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the building might have a third-party reviewer. It depends on if the building official has the time to review it himself or not.
Right,
but that wouldn't be part of the planning and zoning review
Right.
process.
yeah, I do think it, like you said, it waters down what we're doing. So that if you get an applicant that thinks they're here for architectural review, all of a sudden, they're, you know, bona fide, genuine, receptive, all this stuff comes at them, because I've done my share of presentations. And you start to feel like these people are just trying to unearth something. Constantly, they're trying to find something to collapse the project, which is not what we're supposed to be here.
So,
I mean, I asked the question about the fire, excuse me for a second, I asked the question about the fire truck, because I wanted to know what the road was. Where is the road to get you up behind the building?
Right.
That's the whole,
Right.
I didn't see it on the drawing,
Right.
and every project that I've ever worked on that's that, like a bar building that's that long,
Yeah.
you are able to get a fire apparatus on this side and on this side. I mean, it's just pretty standard architecture. And if you put a structured, pavement, grass line in there to be able to take that weight of a fire truck. So that's what I've always known.
okay, so what I was wondering is, are you saying that we should try to, in our comments, try to keep it direct related to architecture as much as possible to help streamline what?
I am, yeah, that's the simple thing. I mean, that's my opinion, but, it's certainly what we do is expanded far beyond what's in the guidelines. If you've read through those, I mean, it's very historic details. A lot of it is outmoded, and it's embarrassing because we don't really do that kind of thing. It's almost historic district, structured around. What it results in is, the applicants thinking that they have to create some sort of New England land, like Disneyland, where there's an architectural language of,
Colonialism.
yeah, let's return to 1820 and but if you think about it, half of what we do or more is really site design, site planning, and in this case, it's really urban design. Unfortunately, it's, in this project, we all get Fs and fails, but I mean.
But we can also look at quality of people who are going to be living in the building. That's why I asked the question about getting into the building from the end where that new parking lot is, and
Right.
and the terraces being window wells.
Yeah,
What's that really like? And I think that's specifically why they did not show a perspective rendering of the back angle of the building, because it's not attractive.
right. Yeah, that would have been something.
I mean, when you're walking along that area by the tracks and you come across this window well, are you going to fall in there, or is there going to probably have to be a chain link fence around the top of it?
Yeah, there's code requirements that
Yeah.
require either fencing or guardrail.
Yeah, I mean,
Stairs.
ew.
Well, then it's probably their egress too, so.
Yeah.
It's probably there. Well, they can't get out. Is there gonna be a ladder to climb the retaining wall and then the chain link fence? And what if they do have a fire and they want to get out, but they can't because they're stuck in this well? It's ridiculous. So, yeah, no, thank you. Hey. I don't know. I don't mind not talking about stormwater runoff. I don't care about that. And I'm less caring about number of parking spaces. But the facade, I think the porte cochere or some kind of a covered porch was a great idea. If they could take that gable end and anchor it to the ground, even with columns or something, so that it doesn't float above the entry that's dark and like a hole.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that entry was like two different buildings.
Yeah, where the hell is it? I couldn't find it.
Yeah, where's the wayfinding?
False gable, but it wasn't even centered really over that.
Yeah, it was partly, and
Yeah.
then their roof went out further.
Yeah,
and it's not articulated, you know. I mean, this is not the cream of the crop architect. And usually the main entries, even at the you know, these various healthcare facilities, so the one across from Quaid's, for example, I mean, their front entries are always the glamour, you know, this is, they illustrate the front entry with
Usually.
disregard for the rest of the building and say, wow, look at this. This is, you know, this is great. And these folks kind of didn't want to even show it. So that's either ignorance or craftiness, you know, just kind of institutionalized living at its finest. Right. All right.
Well, I think we're done.
Hopefully there's nothing more.
No,
Okay.
that is it.
All right. Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you all. Thank you, Keith, for getting the WebEx connected. That's great.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad it worked without any real hang-ups here.
My internet didn't kick out.
Is that projected?
Yeah,
Can we maybe next time plug in that?
yeah, I'm trying to think, when we were here last time, did they do that for the hotel or anything?
No.
Yeah, I'm sure we could,
Do we need a motion to adjourn or are we,
oh, sure, we'll get a motion for that.
Yeah, save my name tag for next
All in
time.
favor? Go on.
Hi.
We'll return these to you, or
Where did these?
Oh, yeah, I can just,
I can put this in my car and just bring it in.
right.
Bye, everyone.